Hi, everybody. I'm Darlene Prides, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of what I'm calling Living Franciscan, which is a series of conversations with people who self-identify as following a Franciscan path of spiritual practice, but without necessarily being a vowed member of an order or affiliated with a congregation. Now, these are intended to be very informal conversations to open up our shared understanding of what it means to be Franciscan now in the 21st century. So today I am happy to be welcoming Jeff Durham to this conversation. Welcome, Jeff.
Welcome. Thank you, Darren, for allowing me to be part of this.
Sure. Jeff, we go way back. I can't even remember when we first met. Do you?
I think I want to say it was probably 2006, 2007
Okay.
at the Franciscan School of Theology when it was still in Berkeley. Um, I think I know you came and spoke at one of the classes I was enrolled in my first or second year there. Um, I want to say it was Bill Short's class, one of Bill Short's classes, but it could have also been one of Joe Kenichi's classes as well. It
Okay.
was one of those introductory Franciscan courses.
Yeah, I have no memory of that. I wonder what I said, but more importantly, why did you enroll at FST, a Franciscan School of Theology, and what was it about the Franciscan charism that was drawing you in?
I wanted to expand my. I already had an undergraduate in philosophy, and I wanted to expand my knowledge of theology, religious studies, and since I lived in Oakland and Berkeley was in GTU or Graduate Theological Union were right there, I looked at several different schools, and I think I think part of what appealed to me with the Franciscans was one, the hospitality of it. It was very much, come on in, talk to us. It was basically like having dinner with old friends rather than a formal kind of system of meeting this panel of people. It was much more familial. That would be the word I would use. It's much more of a familial sense that I got there, which was growing up in the South in North Carolina. Uh, I was used to and more comfortable with that type of religious engagement than ones that were much more formal. So I think one of the things that maybe over the other schools that were there was the familial nature of it and also the informal nature of their uh, and the informal nature of their uh, type of theology or their type of welcoming behavior.
Yeah, so it sounds to me like there was this academic pull. He wanted to engage in academic theology, but it was that familial or friendly engagement when you were starting to interview the different schools. You felt at home at FST.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what it was. And then once you get into the more heavy duty theology, it was still like that. And the more I learned about Francis, the more in a formal educational sense, the more I was definitely appealed to me.
What was it? What was it about Francis or the theologians?
I think it was their sense of realizing that they were talking to actual people and actual real world problems versus it being completely abstract. I think that was part of it. A large part of it was that both Francis and Claire were talking to both not only their communities but uh, the people surrounding those communities. Not even, I mean, not the people in their order, which wasn't even an order in their direct communities, but also the larger communities outside.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So they were addressing real, yeah, they were addressing real world questions. It wasn't just, are these two brothers or these two sisters are bickering or having a disagreement. It was also, how does this expand to the world outside? How can what we're doing within this cloister or in this friary expand it to the world, greater world as a whole?
So that brings up an issue that, because I've been looking into the textual tradition around peacemaking and the Franciscan tradition. And I'm looking for examples of real life peace resolution in the text. So you bring this up, so let's expand on that. What did you learn about resolving conflicts from studying the Franciscan tradition?
I think conversation is key. You have to talk to one another. You have to. Uh, that's what both Francis and Claire seem to do, is to try to bring people in as a conversation, to have a conversation rather than to be locked in their independent towers, as it were. I think of Francis going and trying to um, talk with the Sultan, and how that, he did it without, many people would have martyred, or he didn't do it, or that may have been, I think that other people probably would have went in it with a less of a conversational and more of a polemical
Mhm.
uh tone, and that would have been probably what got them executed. And the fact that he went in there and not necessarily successful, but at least tried to talk. And I think that's one of the reasons him and the people that were with him made it back out alive. But I also think from his writings, or from what we know, it seemed to have changed him in some way with his outlook to other people. So I think it was positive for Francis. I think it made him realize that people, even though they're different in religious faith, ethnicity, it's still, I think it, for him, whether or not he changed the Sultan's mind,
Mhm.
I think it gave him a greater openness to realizing and appreciating the differences in other people.
Yeah, and staying with the differences
And,
without that polemical edge of,
and staying with it, exactly.
yeah. And I want to expand on this because, um, well, two things. In my own experience, I wonder if it even goes beyond conversation because sometimes we don't have the same words, the same language, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the quality of presence. I experience that in the hospice caregiving. It's a quality of presence that we bring.
Well, I think it's a quality of presence and a quality of hospitality. Even if you don't speak the same language, things like hospitality, giving of food, um, I think that's a universal language. And I know when I've been out, give you a good example. We were out in San Diego, not San Diego, Oceanside, and we had went to go get food, breakfast. We had some for takeout, and there was somebody there that was on homeless, uh, couldn't really speak. I don't know if that was a fluency issue or something else,
Mhm.
but we went and, squatted down next to him and basically gave him the food. And there was an exchange there that was completely nonverbal, but I think it changed both me and the people I was with, as well as this other person. Just that simple act of hospitality uh, make the difference. We didn't have to exchange words. So I think that's another key to uh, the nature of Franciscanism, is that there's such an emphasis on hospitality and basically recognizing the person that you're with as a reflection of divinity, and that's how you're able to communicate in a fashion that transcends a verbal it goes across verbal lines, it goes across religious lines, it goes across so many different lines to enable you to engage each other on a very fundamental level. We all have to eat. We don't all have to worship the same God. We don't all have to worship the same way. One thing we do have to do is eat.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that experience of mutuality, that mutual connection. You were not just giving food to someone who was unhoused, but you received from that interaction a sense of connection that I think is
Yes.
sacred and valuable. Yeah. Um, so that this issue of hospitality is one of mutual exchange, and it's not necessarily material exchange, but connection of souls, I guess. Um,
Well, I think for me, that's also I get that when I um, go to mass and receive the Eucharist. The whole idea that um, I don't remember who said it or said it this way, but I we go to consume God so that God may consume us. I would say you can go even beyond that and say you're consuming love to let love consume you. And I think that's what the centrality of like hospitality and eating and sharing is that we're fundamental we are changing the other entity, the other person, and they're also changing us. So it's like a mutual exchange of love, hospitality. um, that would be what I would get from it.
yeah, absolutely. Um, I want to go back to something you said because before we started expanding on this mutuality of connection, you were really focusing on conversation and how important conversation is. So
Mhm.
I wonder if we can expand on that and go down that avenue
Yes.
for a moment, because do you experience it easy to open up conversations, especially if there's tension or conflict?
Yes. For me, yes. And I think one of the I didn't used to be that way before I went to FST and before I was became far, learn more about the Franciscan charism. I think I was much more uh, dogmatic or kind of would dig my heels in of I'm right or this opinion that I support is right and you're on the other side, you're wrong. And I think the more I was exposed and learn about the Franciscan charism, the way to do or way to engage conversationally with people, I learned to be much more open and understanding of the other person's view and where they were coming from and what formed that view. And then also self reflection upon why do I feel this way? What was forming my view? Um, so I brought that um, late, and I think it does enable me to in uh, social connections, but also in my workplace. Where I work at, I'm kind of the go-to person that if you need to talk about this in like this kind of non-judgmental way that people come and ask me about different uh, personal problems that they may be having or ethical problems. I mean, part of that's also they also know that I have degrees in, you know, uh, theology and spirituality and things like that. So, but I think that because of what I've learned in the Franciscan tradition, I've been able to come at it in a kind of that I wouldn't have done before in a non-judgmental and kind of affirming way.
Can we expand on that a little bit further? I mean, how did that happen? How did this shift happen? What was it I have a feeling it was in part what you studied, but also how you studied and
There's well, I think a large part of that's because I think because there's a for the Franciscans, there's also an experiential nature to education. So it wasn't just the things we learned in the classroom at FST. It was going and um, working with and St. Anthony's Foundation and going and working with Sojourn Chaplaincy at San Francisco General, all through that kind of both the GTU and the Franciscan connections, and so learning it on an experiential way and not just a academic mental way, I think is what helped form me and shape me in that regard. So it wasn't just the educational aspect, which I am grateful to the Franciscans for, but it was also the experiential, part of it as well. It's like what was the preach the gospel at all times and if necessary use words. So yeah, it's good to talk, but yeah, but at the same time go and show what you've learned by what you're doing and the way you're ministering or and the way you're talking to people. And I think that's also during my time with St. Anthony's and walking the streets and talking to people helped me a great deal to learn to be a non-judgmental presence and conversation partner with people.
yeah, can you give a concrete example of how someone you met someone on the street and how they affected you and helped you grow into this way of being?
I think one of the there was I cannot remember what her name was.
Mhm.
I may have never known it, but there was a older woman. She was probably in her 60s or 70s, and I remember seeing her come up Golden Gate from Market Street. Uh, Her shoes were like literally falling apart. She was probably, I'd seen her before. I'd seen her sleeping on the street, and she was coming up, and I noticed that she had like a $20 bill on her hand. And I said, ma'am, you should be, well, somebody's going to mug you. Where are you headed to? I'll walk you there. And she said, I'm going to the church, St. Boniface. And so I said, well, here, I'll go there with you. And I thought she was going in there to pray or sleep because at that time the Gubbio project was run out of St. Boniface in the back part of the church. And so I walked with her into the church. One of the first things she did, there was a poor box on the side of in St. Boniface, right when you walk in. And she went up and put that $20 that someone had given her to get food and to put it into that poor box and I said, well, and I asked her, why did you do that? Why did you do that? What you could have used that for something. She said, because there are people that are worse off than I am. And that struck me on a profound level that here is someone that sleeps on the street. I'd seen her sleeping on the street. Shoes were almost non-existent, in rags, and yet she was giving the money that somebody had given her to help others less than her. And that completely changed my way of, I think it completely changed my way of seeing people as somebody that I could help and seeing that then things like this are things that help me kind of move my perception of how things are. And I'm not the person in charge, that they're my teachers.
Yeah,
And I think there's uh, it's very humbling for me because I'm always the one that's you're the smart one. You need to tell us what to do. It's like, no, we need to do this together. This is not a you or me. This is both of us working together.
absolutely. And really thank you for sharing that story. As I study the Franciscan tradition more and more, I'm looking in the text and in the lived experience for the people who go unnamed, the anonymous laity who
Mhm.
are the teachers of Francis and Clare, who challenge Francis and Clare in the text, but we often overlook them. Uh, but here they are in
Mhm.
our lives too, and they, like you said, these people are my most important teachers in my life. So I'm glad that you shared that. And sometimes maybe it's not all that important that we know someone's name or title, but what they do and how they teach us uh, to transform. Yeah. So let me ask you, do you self-identify? Do you call yourself a Franciscan? How do you use that?
Yes.
Yeah.
People tell people I'm not, I say, this is the Franciscan charism is what how I identify. And, when they ask, some of them know, some of them, if they're Catholic, know, but far more of them aren't. And so I'm like, well, this is, basically kind of follow the path of a 800-year-old tradition that started with Saint Francis of Assisi. And it's funny, it's when you say Saint Francis of Assisi, especially here in California, they know who you're talking about. They may not know who he was, but they recognize the name. Um, so that's the way I kind of explain it and kind of tell them a little bit. That's how it shaped my life. That's why I um, am always saying, well, we have this extra food from this party or this event. Let's go find a way to distribute it to the poor. Well, what were you going to do? Oh, you were going to throw it away. No, no, no. Give it to me. I will put it in my car and I'll take it down to one of the one of the places that are unfortunately down here few and far between, uh, or to a church or a local church that had like a food donation facility, or I'll have seen people on my way, a homeless encampment,
Mhm.
and will stop there and give them the food. That's the way I I will engage with it. But that's what I tell people, that's is what I went to school for, who I went to school with, uh, and who I identify with.
Yeah, thank you. We've touched on several different aspects of how you live into this charism. Are there aspects that we haven't touched on yet that you'd like to bring forward? Talked about hospitality, conversation, that mutuality.
I think those are the greatest ones I've taken away with me and that I've managed to incorporate into my daily life. I think there's other good ones. Peacekeeping, uh, which Louis Vitale was really pivotal in. Um, but it's not necessarily something I myself do. I'm appreciative of it, and I will talk about it. But day to day life, that's not as common to kind of integrate with.
Mhm. Yeah, I think we all find our way into this
So
tradition.
I the
Please go ahead.
when you're talking about an organizational aspect, I think if for me the uh, kind of the more human conversational aspect of it is much more workable, much more tangible. I can see kind of engage on it. I can engage with it without. I think with peacekeeping, there's unfortunately in our society there's much more of or a political uh, bias that's thrown that way. Unfortunately, because of the divisive nature of our society, that you're in this camp or you're in this camp. I don't think you have that as much when you're entering into a conversation or practicing mutuality and things like that. I think that's a harder I think that's harder to be divisive about when you're trying to understand another person's point of view.
Yeah, thank you. So you've offered us a lot to consider about what it means to be Franciscan here in the 21st century. Before we close, I just want to give you one more opportunity. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us about your path, your personal path, or?
I think I'm glad that really glad that you're doing this because I think all too often people view the Franciscan charism oftentimes through the lens of the friars or the poor clares. So I think having it um, done, what you're doing is opens up a new avenue for getting that out to people and realizing you don't have to be a, a friar or a Franciscan friar or a Franciscan sister to engage with people on a Franciscan level. I think what you're doing is vital. And I stress to people to learn about the Franciscan tradition and apply it in your everyday life. And I think that's also a key thing with the Franciscans that not necessarily a lot of religious orders can do. Because I think that people forget there are three. There's this the lay Franciscans, uh, the friars, and the sisters. So there's three. So I think people forget the third one a lot, or they look at it in a more formal aspect rather than what I think Francis originally envisioned, which was a much more casual fraternity of people that went out rather than a more formal fraternity, which I think is what many secular Franciscan chapters are.
Right. Yeah, another way of saying that would be a more organic way of living into this
Yes,
rather than,
that's a better yes, that would be a better way to say that.
yeah. So there's increasing efforts to talk about people like you and me who are not vowed members or um, who have not professed in the secular Franciscan tradition, um, but who live out the charism on our own and in our community. And there's efforts made to call this the fourth order. And I kind of balk at that
Hmm.
because of the association of institutionalization. There are many of
I
us
would agree with that.
who live with this charism, and it's in a very fluid way. And I think the one thing that we all share, all the first, second, third order, and all of the rest of us, is this notion that the Franciscan way is really about ongoing conversion until our very last breath. That there are ways to continue to deepen our commitments to this practice of mutuality and uh, hospitality, as you say, and seeing Christ in one another. We're seeing the same.
I completely agree with that. I think one of the problems by identifying it as a fourth order is that then you're, for better or for worse, obligated to kind of formalize, oh, well, you can't say this or you can't talk to those people because they're outside of the church or they're outside. And so I think that you and I, by being outside that, do not have those same restrictions. I can talk to whoever I want to talk to. But I can affirm something about this person that is key to who they are as an individual and as a child of God. Um, that the institutional church may not agree with, but saying, well, and I'm like, well, I'm not representing you. I'm representing, based on what I know of the Franciscan charism, this person is loved just as I'm loved, just as much as you're loved.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds so easy, and we know that it's not always easy to live this out, right?
It's not. No, it's not.
With each and every breath, there can be challenges. Well, thank you, Jeff, for this conversation. This has been rich, and
Thank you, darling.
it's
And
really
thank you for allowing me to participate.
sure. I know that our technology here, there's a couple of these glitches, so these pauses are
Yes.
awkward, but thanks for bearing with us, all of you who are watching this, and Jeff, especially thank you. I really appreciate this.
Oh, no problem.